All right, let's dive in. This time, we're taking a trip to West Virginia. Looks like we've got articles, notes, maybe even some daydreams about what it would be like to live amongst the mountains.
It's funny, a lot of people picture West Virginia and they just think mountains.
Yeah,
And yeah, the mountains are definitely there, the rolling hills, the winding roads, it's all part of the landscape.
absolutely.
But what really makes West Virginia interesting is how those mountains shape the people who live there. It's more than just a pretty view. It's like woven into the fabric of life there.
It is, and this article we've got, Top 5 Things You Need to Know When Moving to West Virginia, it really gets into that. For instance, you mentioned those winding roads. Well, apparently they can really mess with your GPS.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a good reminder that West Virginia isn't a place you just breeze through. You got to slow down, take it all in, and maybe even get lost a little along the way.
You got it. That's
Yeah.
West Virginia for you.
I love that. And speaking of slowing down, the article also talks about how nature is everywhere in West Virginia. It's not just something you visit on weekends, it's part of daily life.
Exactly. Hiking, fishing, or even just sitting on your porch and listening to the crickets. It's all part of the experience.
And they have this great detail in here about wading into a creek, and the water's just crystal clear.
Oh, yeah.
Cleaner than, well, pretty much anywhere else.
Yeah.
Makes you think, huh, what are we doing wrong in other places?
Right. It makes you appreciate how West Virginians think about their resources. Clean water. That's not just a luxury, it's a way of life there. And that respect for nature, it goes into everything from farming to how they make decisions about the state.
Makes you want to fill up a water bottle straight from the source. But, the article does mention that getting close to nature in West Virginia, well, that means encountering the wild side, too. Bears, deer darting across the road. You might even find a spider or two in your hiking boots.
Yeah, you can't just romanticize it. You have to remember, nature has its own rules. And respecting those rules, that's part of what it means to live in harmony with it. Be prepared, learn about the local wildlife, take the necessary precautions.
So it's not all just pretty sunsets and babbling brooks. But hey, a little adventure makes things exciting, right?
I'd say so. And it makes you tougher, more resilient.
Definitely.
Which actually brings us to another big point from the article, the strong sense of community you find in West Virginia. Now, the population density might be low, but the human connections are anything but.
Yeah, they even made this funny comparison about sneezing in a grocery store aisle.
Oh, yeah.
I said you could sneeze and have 3 people asking if you're okay.
Haha, that's that West Virginia hospitality. But it really goes deeper than that. People look out for each other in these small towns. You're not just a face in the crowd. They know your name, they know your story, and they're there to help when you need it.
So it's a trade-off. Maybe you give up some big city anonymity, but you gain a sense of belonging, something that's hard to find in those more urban areas.
Absolutely. And that feeling of belonging, well, it connects to a different pace of life, too. Things just move differently in West Virginia.
Oh, I love this part of the article.
Yeah.
It talks about how time seems to have a different meaning there. Like if someone says, I'll be there in a minute, they might actually mean an hour.
Uh-huh.
But it's not meant to be rude. It's just a different way of approaching time.
Exactly. There's a sense of ease, a willingness to let things unfold at their own pace. You're not going to see people rushing around, stressed out, glued to their phones all the time.
I'm picturing myself on a porch swing, sipping some sweet tea, watching the world go by. No deadlines, no traffic jams, just pure relaxation.
Sounds about right. And that slower pace, it really impacts how people interact with each other. Conversations aren't rushed, meals are savored. There's a genuine warmth in how folks connect. It's like stepping back in time, in a good way.
Definitely. Okay, we've got the breathtaking nature, the strong communities, the slower pace of life. What about the food? This article makes a big deal about pepperoni rolls, claims they're practically a cultural phenomenon in West Virginia.
Oh, they're more than just a snack. They're like a symbol of the state's history, its resilience. They started in the coal mines as a hearty lunch for the miners, but now you find them everywhere. Gas stations, fancy restaurants, they're everywhere.
And everybody has their favorite version,
Oh,
right?
yeah, definitely.
You've got your simple pepperoni and bread, then you've got these gourmet creations with fancy cheeses, sauces. It's a whole world.
And don't even get people started on the debate over whether the pepperoni should be sliced or ground. That can get heated.
I can imagine. Sounds like I'll have to do some taste testing of my own. But speaking of unique West Virginia flavors, the article also mentioned something called ramp season. What exactly are ramps, and why are people so crazy about them?
Ramps are wild leeks that grow in the Appalachian Mountains. They have this incredibly pungent, garlicky flavor that people either love or hate. And for a few weeks every spring, the whole state goes a little ramp crazy.
The article makes it sound like a full-blown obsession. Ramp festivals, ramp dinners, people going on and on about how many pounds of ramps they foraged. It's pretty amazing.
It's like a celebration of spring, a way to appreciate the bounty of the land.
I love that.
But be warned, ramp breath is definitely a thing.
Oh, no.
You might want to have some breath mints handy, if you're planning on socializing after a ramp-heavy meal.
Good tip. So we've got pepperoni rolls, ramp season. Anything else I absolutely have to try if I ever make it to West Virginia?
Well, you can't talk about West Virginia food without mentioning Tudor's Biscuit World. It's a local institution. Their Mary B. biscuit sandwich is legendary. Think fluffy biscuits, savory sausage, creamy gravy. Pure comfort food heaven.
Okay, my stomach is officially rumbling. But before we run off to find the nearest biscuit joint, let's wrap up this part of our West Virginia deep dive. We've covered nature, community, pace of life, and food. What else does this article highlight as essential to understanding the West Virginian spirit?
Well, it really emphasizes the independent and resilient nature of the people. They're problem solvers, DIY masters, and they have this really strong belief in helping their neighbors. It's not just a nice thing to do, it's ingrained in the state's history and culture.
So it's more than just being self-sufficient. It's about being part of a community that supports each other. That's a powerful combination.
It really is. And it makes West Virginia a truly unique place. But to really understand it, I think we need to dig a little deeper into the state's history, and the challenges it's facing today. We'll be back in a moment to explore those aspects.
All right, we're back, ready to dig a little deeper into the heart of West Virginia. We've been painting a pretty rosy picture so far, the stunning nature, friendly folks, amazing food. But we got to be real, there's more to it than that, right?
Absolutely. West Virginia has layers, It's a state that's changing, figuring out how to blend its traditions with where things are headed in the future.
And a big part of that identity is tied to coal, like we mentioned before. This article really digs into that. It says coal was basically king in West Virginia for decades. It drove the economy, built communities, even influenced how people saw themselves.
Oh, for sure. Coal was more than just a job. It was a whole way of life. You think about the image of a coal miner, way down in the earth, facing danger every day. That grit, that resilience, that's a big part of what West Virginia is all about.
Yeah, it makes you realize that self-reliance we keep talking about, it's not just some personality quirk. It's something they learned from facing hardship, depending on each other to get through tough times.
Right. That hard life in the core mines, it built a culture of being practical, figuring things out, and knowing your community had your back. You had to rely on your own skills and on your neighbors to overcome whatever came your way.
Makes sense. But this article also talks about the other side of coal, the not-so-great parts, the damage to the environment, those boom and bust cycles that left people struggling, the health problems a lot of miners face. It's a mixed bag.
It's a complex story for sure, and it's not over yet as West Virginia figures out how to move away from coal, how to find a way forward that's better for everyone.
And that brings us back to what we talked about before, that push for new kinds of jobs, new industries. It seems like there's a real effort to not rely so much on coal anymore, to create different opportunities for people.
Definitely. It's a big challenge, though, Attracting those new businesses, building the infrastructure they need, helping people learn new skills for different kinds of jobs. It's a lot to tackle.
But are there any bright spots? What are some of the industries that are looking promising in West Virginia?
Well, renewable energy is getting a lot of attention, particularly things like solar and wind power. The funny thing is, the same things that made West Virginia good for coal, the natural resources and that rugged landscape, well, they're actually good for these new energy projects, too.
So the same mountains that supported coal could be powering the future in a whole new way. That's really interesting.
It is. And then there's tourism. West Virginia is beautiful. And there's also potential in technology fields and more advanced manufacturing. The state has a lot going for it. Gorgeous scenery, a low cost of living, and people who know how to work hard. It's about connecting those things with the right opportunities.
It feels like it requires a certain mindset, though, both from people who already live there and folks thinking about moving to West Virginia. You have to be adaptable, resourceful, and ready for whatever comes next.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't a place where you can just sit around and wait for things to happen, You got to be willing to make things happen, create your own path, put in the effort.
Which, like we said before, kind of seems to be in West Virginians' blood. That independent spirit, that roll-up-your-sleeves attitude, it could be a real strength during this time of change.
I think you're right. It's about using that spirit, focusing it on new ventures, and building a future that respects the past but embraces the possibilities of today.
Okay, let's say I'm totally on board. I'm convinced West Virginia has a bright future. I'm packing my bags, ready for those mountain views. Where do I even start looking for a place to live? What's the housing market like?
Well, one of the best things about West Virginia, especially if you're coming from somewhere expensive, is that housing is really affordable. There's a lot of different options too, something for just about any budget and lifestyle.
Give me the details. What kind of places are we talking about?
Oh, you name it. You got those charming historic homes in cute little towns, cozy cabins tucked away in the woods, those big farmhouses with lots of land. And if you're the kind of person who wants to build their own place, land's pretty easy to come by and doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Sounds like a dream. But what about the practical stuff? Schools, healthcare, all the things you need in daily life. Those are important when you're picking a place to live, right?
Oh, for sure. That's where doing your research really pays off. The quality of schools, whether there's good healthcare nearby, access to grocery stores and restaurants, and even things like cultural events, it can all be different depending on where you end up in West Virginia.
So it's not just about finding a cute house in a pretty spot.
Yeah,
You got to think about the bigger picture, make sure the community has what you need and fits your priorities.
that's the key. Like, if you have kids, you'll want to check out the different school districts. If you need certain doctors or medical care, you got to be sure there are hospitals and specialists nearby.
So there's a lot to think about. But for those who are up for it, who are willing to put in the effort, it sounds like West Virginia offers something special. A beautiful place to live, a strong community, and all that without breaking the bank.
It does. But you also have to be honest about the challenges. It's a rural state, and that comes with certain things you have to adjust to. Access to certain stores or services might be limited, internet speeds might not be what you're used to, and finding the right job might take some extra creativity and hustle.
So it's not a perfect paradise. It's a real place with real pros and cons.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, whether or not West Virginia is right for you, that's a really personal decision. It's about weighing everything, understanding what it's really like, and deciding if it matches your life and your values.
Well said. But even if someone never ends up moving to West Virginia, I think there's something valuable in exploring different ways of life, even if it's just from afar. It can spark new ideas, make you question what you think you know, and maybe even inspire you to make some positive changes where you are.
I agree. West Virginia, with all its quirks and charms and challenges, shows us that there are different ways to live, different things to focus on, a different rhythm to life.
And maybe by opening ourselves up to those different ways of being, we can all grow a little bit, discover new possibilities within ourselves and our own communities wherever we are.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of opening ourselves up, let's shift gears a bit and explore the cultural side of West Virginia. There's more to it than just mountains and mining towns. There's a whole artistic scene to discover. Be back in a jiffy to check it out.
We're back for our final look at moving to West Virginia. We've covered a lot of ground, from pepperoni rolls to what the job market's like, from those close-knit communities to the slower pace of life. What a journey it's been.
It really has. You know, what stands out to me is how it all comes together. You know, how those different pieces make West Virginia something really unique. It's more than just a place to live. It's like a whole different way of being.
Okay, so for someone who's maybe on the fence about making a move, what would you say is the biggest reason to consider West Virginia?
Tough question. Because it really depends on what you're looking for, right? What matters to you. But I think for a lot of folks, it's that feeling of genuineness you find in West Virginia. That's a big draw.
Genuineness. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a place where people are down to earth, you know? They're real, they're connected to where they come from. There's not a lot of pretending or trying to be something you're not. It's more about community, family, those simple things that make life good.
So it's like a break from all that pressure,
Yeah.
the pressure to achieve, to buy a bunch of stuff, to look perfect all the time, all that stuff we deal with in bigger places.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what appeals to some people, that chance to slow down, connect with their community, and get back to nature. It's a different way of being.
We've talked a lot about the challenges of moving to West Virginia, like the job market, finding certain amenities, all that. But what about the good stuff? What are some of the unexpected things people might discover when they move there?
Well, you know, one thing that surprises a lot of folks is how much freedom they feel in West Virginia. All that open space, no traffic jams, the slower pace, it gives you room to breathe, you know. Not just physically, but mentally, too.
I bet that feels amazing, especially coming from a place where it's go, go, go all the time.
It does. It really does. And that freedom carries over into other parts of life, too. You have more time for hobbies, for your family, for trying new things, being creative. You can be yourself, without people judging you or pushing you to fit in a certain way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, moving like that, it takes guts, right? It's going outside your comfort zone into the unknown. You got to trust that you'll find your place in a whole new world.
Oh, for sure. It's not something to jump into lightly. But if you're willing to take that chance, it can be incredibly rewarding.
Okay, let's say someone's listening to us and they're like, West Virginia sounds amazing, but what if it's not right for me? What advice would you give them?
I'd say be curious. Go learn more about it. Visit if you can. Talk to people who live there. Get a feel for the place. See if it speaks to you. You might be surprised by what you find.
And even if you never end up moving there, just thinking about different ways to live, that can be a good thing.
Totally. It makes you think differently, question things you take for granted, and maybe even figure out what really matters to you.
So whether you're dreaming of mountain views or just want a life that's a bit simpler, more connected, we hope our West Virginia deep dive has made you want to explore, to ask questions, and to see what's possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Keep searching for those connections that make life richer.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. The West Virginia Media Lab is all about celebrating our state and its people, businesses, stories, news, and folklore. If you love West Virginia like we do, be sure to comment below, then subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Until next time, stay wild, wonderful, West Virginia.